Hello, my name is Barry Lesser. I'm the director of the joint program between Dalhousie University and the University of Finance and Economics in Mongolia. The joint program that exists between Dalhousie and UFE was started 2 years ago. But with COVID-19 having entered the picture in the last year and a half, approximately, there have not yet been any students coming to Dalhousie as part of this program. You are the current first-year class in economics at UFE. And that means, under the terms of the program, as I'll describe it to you in a few moments, that you will have the opportunity next year, in the fall of 2021, to apply to come to Dalhousie for September of 2022. We currently are expecting that we will be back to in-person teaching at Dalhousie this September of 2021. And even if we don't succeed in meeting that target of resuming relatively normal campus life by September, we certainly will do so by the second semester of the next academic year, that is by January 2022. And that means that by the time you would be coming to Dalhousie in September of 2022, we will be back to some degree of normal operations. So, although much of what I may describe to you today that you can anticipate in the future may not be possible right at this moment, we're talking about it with the firm expectation that it will be possible by the time that you are in a position to actually avail yourself of the opportunity that is there. Basically, the joint program agreement that we have entered into between our two institutions provides that Dalhousie will recognize and give credit for your 2 years of study at UFE this year and next year, assuming that all of your courses are successful. That is, that you pass them all. And in turn, you will then take your final 2 years of undergraduate academic study at Dalhousie. And that, of course, will count as Dalhousie Credit, giving you 4 years of complete credit when we recognize for transfer credit purposes that first 2 years of study at UFE. UFE, for its part, has agreed to recognize your 2 years at Dalhousie. So you will also have 4 years of undergraduate study credited to you by UFE. And at the end of your 4 years, you will in fact receive a degree from each institution. That is to say, under the terms of this program, as long as you're successful in completing all the courses in your first 2 years at UFE and all the courses in your next final 2 years at Dalhousie, you receive a double degree. You receive a degree from each institution. Now, what I want to do today is to tell you a little bit more about Dalhousie, tell you a little bit more about some of our experience with programs similar to this one that we have been conducting with some Chinese university partners for the last 10 years or more, and to say a little bit about the cost of coming to Dalhousie to study for 2 years. This is an important point that you will need to obviously discuss with your parents if this is an opportunity that you decide you want to investigate further. The cost is high, as you will shortly discover, and it therefore becomes a major financial decision, both for you and most importantly for your family, for your parents, perhaps your grandparents. And because of this, it's something that you need to obviously take a lot of time to discuss with your family, to think about, and to try to decide if this is in fact the right choice for you. Now, that is a decision that you don't have to finally make until sometime next year. And in fact, you can proceed to apply to Dalhousie in order to find out whether you will in fact be accepted by Dalhousie. You can make that decision without making a firm commitment that you will necessarily come if given the opportunity. You can in fact be accepted and still decide not to actually show up, not to come. You can do that right up until the time that classes for third year are scheduled to begin. You will have a few costs depending on how far into the process you go, but generally speaking, other than paying for an English language proficiency test such as the IELTS or TOEFL, other than doing that, which may be of value to you to assess your English ability in any case, and a small deposit that you have to pay to Dalhousie when you get accepted, there is a requirement that within a certain amount of time you have to make a deposit, which if you then do not come is not refundable. But that's not a huge amount of money. It's about 200 Canadian dollars. So your costs in exploring the option and at least keeping the opportunity available is relatively small. And that is something that, for that reason, we urge people who might be interested to at least think about. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about Dalhousie. Dalhousie is on the east coast of Canada. It's in the city of Halifax, which is in the province of Nova Scotia, bordering on the Atlantic Ocean. Mongolia is in Asia, next door to China, which borders on the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean is on the west coast of Canada, touching the Canadian province of British Columbia. And that means that, in fact, if you're at Dalhousie, you're in Halifax, you're in Nova Scotia, then you are a very, very long distance from home, from Mongolia. Dalhousie, or the city of Halifax, I should say, is a port city. As you will have noted perhaps from the map I just showed you, Nova Scotia is almost an island. It is joined on land to the rest of North America only at one point, one small, narrow point, and otherwise is surrounded by ocean. And Halifax is the capital city of Nova Scotia, and it is a major port city. On the left in this slide is a picture, an aerial photo showing the entrance to Halifax Harbor. On the right-hand side and into the lower right corner is part of the old city of Halifax. This green area in the center was a British fort that was built because Halifax was founded by European settlers from Britain, and it was initially a port city used by the British as part of their colonial holdings in North America. It was a large or central piece of British North America. And this area in the middle that you see, that is the large green area, which is now a national park, was built on a hill overlooking the harbor as a fortress that could defend the harbor against enemy shipping. In the 17th, 18th centuries, that meant 16th, 17th, 18th centuries, that meant primarily Spain and France in particular, with whom England was frequently at war. Dalhousie is the primary university in the province of Nova Scotia. It's the largest university. It's the most comprehensive university. It has a full slate of professional programs as well as degree programs at the undergraduate and graduate level. It offers both master's and doctoral degrees in most disciplines. And it is a school of approximately 19,000 students. We'll say a little bit more about Dalhousie in a moment, but let me first say a little bit more about the city of Halifax. This is another photo involving the harbor and some of the modern buildings in the downtown core, which is adjacent to the waterfront. This, of course, is a sailing ship. Because of the ocean environment, the fact that Nova Scotia is surrounded by ocean to the degree it is, sailing ships of all kinds are something you see frequently. Mongolia, of course, is a landlocked country, and you don't get to see many ships other than smaller river craft, perhaps, in some places where rivers are to be found. So this is an aspect of life in Halifax which will be different and novel for any of you that may in fact come. This is a picture of the public library in the city of Halifax, a very modern building, as you can see. This is a photo of showing parts of the so-called downtown core of the city with the harbor in in the background. The city, in fact, it covers a lot of land area on both sides of the harbor. So over here is also part of the city of Halifax. Some further pictures of different things. This Spring Garden Road photo is quite close, a shopping business district, which is quite close to the university, and therefore is an area that students very frequently go to for purposes of restaurants. There are some movie theaters to be found. There are various lounges and other entertainment spots, and there is shopping, clothing, and a variety of other goods. This is a photo of part of the main Dalhousie campus. Dalhousie has 3 campuses. 2 of them are in the city of Halifax. One is in a town approximately 100 kilometers away from Halifax. That is where the Faculty of Agriculture is located. That's not a faculty that any of you who are studying economics are likely to be involved with. So you would be on the main Halifax campus. The second campus in Halifax is mainly for engineering and architectural students, and again, not one that you are likely to end up being largely involved in. So your main contact will be with the so-called original campus, the main campus, which is where most of the undergraduate programs are located. Dalhousie is more than 200 years old at this point. It was founded in 1818. It is not only the largest university in Halifax, but it's the largest university east of Montreal in any of the 4 so-called Atlantic provinces of Canada, which includes the provinces of Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland, Labrador. It is generally ranked as one of the top 10 universities in Canada. It has 13 faculties with more than 220 degree programs at various levels, undergraduate, master's, and doctoral. It has more than 19,000 students, and more than 3,000 of those are international students who come from more than 115 different countries around the world. The country which has the single largest number of students at Dalhousie is China. A lot of Chinese students currently come to Canada every year for study. As many Chinese students go to the United States or to the UK, to Australia. Most of the Chinese students who study abroad go to English-speaking countries because English is a foreign language that most of the Chinese students today are learning, which is true, I think, also for Mongolia. But the number of Chinese students has also gone up in the last few years in proportional terms, because that is the number coming to Canada, in part because the United States under the presidency of Donald Trump and other developments in U.S. immigration policy has become less inviting as a place for Chinese or other Asian students to go. Because of the COVID-19, largely fueled by, initially at least by adverse comments about the origin of COVID-19, which Donald Trump attributed to China. That in turn has also given rise to some anti-Asian racism outbursts in the United States, which has worsened the environment in the U.S. for people of Asian descent in general. And that may, on occasion, encompass people from Mongolia as well. Depends very much on where in the U.S. you end up and what the local community standards are in many respects. But it is a less likely occurrence. I can't promise you that this is something that would never occur in Canada, but certainly the general experience in Canada is far more favorable at the moment than in the U.S. in this respect. Coming back to Dalhousie, 90% of the faculty at Dalhousie have doctoral degrees or the equivalent. The student-teacher ratio at Dalhousie is 17-1. That's a very important number because the average of number of students per professor, per instructor, tells you something about the amount of individual attention that you are likely to get from your teachers. And that 17-1 ratio for Dalhousie is in fact the lowest student-teacher ratio of any of the top 10 or indeed the top 15 major universities in Canada. And that is a distinction Dalhousie is very proud of, and it does indicate that you are likely to get much more individual attention as a Dalhousie student than you might if you went to another of the major universities in Canada. These are a few pictures of graduation at Dalhousie. They show in particular some of the Chinese students who have come to Dalhousie as part of a similar program to the one that we are talking about with you today, that between Dalhousie and UFE. These students come from the Chinese province of Shandong. We have an arrangement, a joint program agreement in economics with the Shandong University of Finance and Economics, an institution very much similar to UFE. And those students at Dalhousie have done extremely well. We have now had more than 400 students study at Dalhousie from SDUFE. And every one of those students who has completed their 2 years at Dalhousie has in fact graduated from both institutions, because it is also a double degree program. And not only have they done extremely well, not only have they all been successful, but 70% approximately have gone on to graduate study at good quality universities in North America, mostly in Canada, but some in the United States, and some in the United Kingdom, and even a couple from Canada to Australia. And that is important to appreciate, because if you have ambitions to continue your academic study beyond your bachelor program, beyond your undergraduate program, then having a Dalhousie degree, particularly if you want to do that graduate study outside of Mongolia, having the Dalhousie degree, completing your undergraduate study outside of Mongolia, is going to be a major advantage for you in getting accepted to a good quality graduate school in North America or the UK. It's going to be a major advantage because Dalhousie is more likely to be known to those other institutions. And in particular, the standards of Dalhousie are likely to be known. I'm not trying to argue to you that UFE is not as good a university as Dalhousie. Quite the contrary, we think UFE is a good quality university. That's why we have chosen to partner with UFE. But having said that, it is not internationally as well known as Dalhousie. And because of that, there is always going to be some reluctance by foreign admission officers who don't know about the standards of UFE, who haven't had a great deal of experience with students coming from Mongolia. For all of those reasons, the Dalhousie degree is going to be particularly useful for you to get accepted to a good quality graduate school. That is, of course, assuming that you have done well at Dalhousie. And that brings us back to these Chinese students whose preparation in China in economics is not any better than yours at UFE. And these students do well. As I said before, 70% have gone on to graduate school, which in itself is an impressive number, much higher than would be typically true of Canadian students of economics, for example. But in addition, the fact that they have done well enough to get into good quality graduate schools tells you that succeeding at Dalhousie is very, very possible. It takes some hard work, but most things that are worth having in life do take hard work. And the fact that this is also in that category is not a reason for dismissing it, for not taking advantage of it. Quite the contrary. It is all the more reason to try to take advantage of it, because what it tells you is that as long as you are willing to work hard, you will do well. Now, in terms of other advantages, what all of these different Chinese students who've been to Dalhousie, more than 400 of them, what all of them tell us is that they get a lot of advantages, quite apart from the fact that it may be a better avenue for moving on to graduate study at a good quality university outside of China. That one aside, that's important, but it's not the only factor. They tell you that what they also enjoy is that they get to travel, they get to see another country, They get to experience a different university. They get to meet a different set of teachers, of instructors, to be exposed to other points of view. They get to experience another culture. They get to meet new people. They get to make new friends. Those friends and the people they meet more generally are not only Canadians. As I mentioned earlier, there are more than 115 different countries represented in the student body at Dalhousie. And many of your classmates will be from some of those other countries besides Canada. And so you may get to meet people from other parts of Asia, to meet people from Africa, to meet people from Europe, both Eastern Europe and Western Europe, to meet people from the US, because many Americans come to Dalhousie to study. So there are a whole series of advantages living and studying in a different country, a different environment, where a different language is spoken, where your proficiency in English will clearly improve, and where your potential to get accepted for further study will be enhanced. Speaking about the fact that you're going to improve your English, one of the important things in coming to Dalhousie is, of course, that English matters, because that is not only the living language, the language of life in the community that you will become part of, but it is also the language of instruction for all of your courses that you will do at Dalhousie. And so it's important that you have the right level of proficiency in English to start. One of the things that will then be important if you're going to look at coming to Dalhousie is that you must take and give us evidence of the results for an English proficiency test. The two most common tests that are readily acceptable are the IELTS, which is a UK-based test, and the TOEFL, which is a US-based test. There may be a few others which, if you are not able to do the IELTS or the TOEFL, but have access to some other, check with us before you do it to make sure that we will accept it, but there may be some others. But I'm going to talk to you right now mainly about the TOEFL and the IELTS because those are the most common. You will need to do one of those two tests, preferably next fall. That is in the first semester of your second year at UFE. You can do it earlier because we'll accept a test result as long as it has taken place within 2 years of your application. And so anything you do from now up through when you apply next fall is going to be readily acceptable. On the IELTS, we are going to ask you to, or we're going to require you to have a standard of at least 6.0 as a score overall. And if you do the TOEFL, you have to have a TOEFL IBT score of 90. Not 90, 79. I'm getting some things confused here. I apologize. The equivalent of an IELTS of 6.0 is a TOEFL of 79. If you have less than those two scores, as long as you have an IELTS of 5.0 or 5.5, then we have a summer ESL program. You can come early to Dalhousie in July and do this 8-week summer program, which, if successful, will bring you up to the level of 6.0, which will allow you to start your academic study in September when the new school year begins. And that is an option which many of our Chinese students who don't get as high as 6.0 when they write the IELTS in China, those students typically take the summer program and are able to start their academic courses in September without any difficulty, I should say. The equivalent in the TOEFL would be if you had a score in the high 60s or up to 75, and then you would be eligible to take that summer program as well. And if successful, that would bring you to the equivalent of a 79 to let you start your academic study. We also require you to do a further 2 semesters of English study once you start at Dalhousie. And we've structured your program to allow you to do that by limiting the number of academic courses you take in your first semester and in your second semester, and then making up the balance of a full year of academic study by staying for the months of May and June and taking some additional courses to get you up to the normal full year load of 10 courses. All of that is detail that we'll talk about more when and if you get particularly interested in applying to Dalhousie and knowing more of these details. But for the moment, suffice it to say that you need to show a certain level on one of these tests in order to get accepted. But that in itself will not keep you out. It will lead instead to a conditional acceptance that will require you to either improve your test score before you start or take the summer program that I was referring to earlier. Now, that's basically what this slide then has to say. That brings us to the issue of fees. And generally speaking, you have to pay 2 major amounts to Dalhousie. Regular tuition, which every undergraduate student pays, is now very close to 11,000 Canadian dollars, specifically 10,982 in the as estimated for the coming year. And since you would be coming in 2022-23, that would be your first year at Dalhousie, that figure may in fact go up. And in addition, there is what we're call for your purposes a special program fee, but which is basically equal to what is normally called the international student differential fee. That is an extra amount that every international student, no matter where they come from, whether it's Mongolia, China, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Brazil, it doesn't matter. Every international student, even those who come from the US or the UK, must pay an additional amount. And that extra amount is currently more than 16,000 Canadian dollars, or estimated by next year to be more than 16,000. And it could also, of course, be higher than following year. There's also a relatively small amount, but noted because it's required, and that is that you must have appropriate health insurance, at least in your first year. After you've been in Canada for 12 months, you will be covered by the Canadian healthcare system, which is a universal healthcare system that provides basic doctor services and basic hospital services free of charge, free of direct charge. You don't have access to that, at least in your first year. You may want to keep other insurance even beyond your first year in order to cover prescription drugs and other special services that are not covered by the government provided healthcare program. But that's something, again, that we can talk about. For the moment, the simple fact is that you have to have some form of health insurance, and although it's a fairly minor cost compared to all these other amounts, it is something that is that you do have to include in your calculations. So that gives us slightly over $28,000, and that does not yet include housing or other living expenses. Other living expenses may include, obviously, food, but also clothing, entertainment, a phone, internet service, etc. On the accommodation, it's important to note that most students go together and share apartments, private apartments. You are not required to live in university residence. You can if you wish, but most students prefer to rent private accommodation, and you are allowed to do that. Only first-year students who are not from the local Halifax community must live in the university dormitory facilities. So we have housing, we have other living expenses that get added on to those tuition and health insurance costs. And basically, you're going to end up needing something close to 45,000 Canadian dollars per year, which at the current exchange rate is slightly more than 100 million Tugrik. And basically, you have to, that's the number you need to discuss with your parents. The fact that it's going to take something in the neighborhood of 100 million Tugrik in order for you to come to Dalhousie per year. And you're coming for 2 years. So, that is the number that you have to think about, talk to your parents about, see if you can make that work for you. The general process is that sometime in this fall, we will invite you to submit applications. You need to take your IELTS or TOEFL in the fall if you don't do it earlier. You're going to have your final exams in December, January. You're going to give us your transcripts by the end of January, beginning of February, if you have them, together with your English proficiency test scores. We will then do your acceptances. We will also at that point have a meeting with you and your parents, and then you have to apply for your visa to get a study permit and student visa to come to Canada. We're not going to go into details about any of that process for now. The main point of today's session is simply to advise you about the opportunity that is available to you to study at Dalhousie, to make sure you know a little bit more about Dalhousie, to know that we do hope that some of you will find it possible to join us, and to assure you that I will, in fact, hoping that COVID the worst of the COVID pandemic will be over by the fall of this year, then it will be possible for me to visit in person and to talk to you when you are second-year students next fall, and to actually collect your applications from you at that time. If you need information in the meantime, you can contact me at the email address shown. You can contact my colleague, Shannon Pung, at the address shown here for her. You can continue to get these addresses from the School of Economics, the Department of Economics at UFE, anytime if you don't remember them or have them. And following your viewing of this video, there will be a meeting, a live session that we will join you online, and if you have questions at that time, we will be happy to try to answer those. So thank you for your attention. I look forward to seeing all of you in person next fall, and some of you I very much hope I look forward to seeing at Dalhousie by September of 2022.